All right, settle in. Because what I'm about to tell you is not just another neighborhood squabble. This, my friends, is the story of how an HOA. Karen thought she could break me down literally and how I turned the tables on her in the most unexpected way. Now, I don't know about you, but when I first moved into my little slice of suburban paradise, I wasn't expecting a battlefield. I was just a regular guy, happy to finally own a home, happy to have a yard to mow, and yeah, maybe even a little excited about the quiet cookie-cutter streets. You know, the kind where every house looks like it came from the same factory blueprint. But paradise. Paradise has rules. And those rules come with enforcers. Enter Karen. Karen wasn't just any neighbor. She was the self-proclaimed queen of our HOA. She wasn't even the elected president-o. No. She was just loud. Loud enough, bossy enough, and annoying enough that people went along with her just to shut her up. She had this clipboard, an actual clipboard that she carried around like it was a badge of honor. She'd scribble notes about people's lawns, their fences, even the color of their curtains. She lived for control. At first, I ignored her. I mean, who wants to pick a fight the first month you move in? But Karen had other plans. It started with the mailbox. My humble little wooden mailbox, nothing fancy. Just a post, a box, and a red flag. But one morning, I walked out to grab my mail, and the thing was leaning like it had just survived a hurricane. The post-cracked box dented. At first, I thought maybe some teenager playing mailbox baseball. Annoying, but not unheard of, so I replaced it. A week later, smashed again. This time, tire tracks led right up to it. And those weren't teenager bicycle treads. Those were car tires, and I had a pretty good guess whose car.c. Karen had this massive SUV, the kind that looks more like a tank than a family car. And she had a habit of swinging wide around corners, especially right near my property line. And wouldn't you know, the angle of the tracks matched perfectly with the turn she took every single morning. I wanted to believe it was an accident. I really did. But when I caught her smirking at me one afternoon, clipboard in hand, as I hammered in a third replacement mailbox, that's when I knew she was doing it on purpose. Now, most people would report it. Call the HOA board, maybe even the cops. But me, I'm stubborn. And a little petty. Okay, maybe a lot petty. So instead of running to Daddy HOA, I decided I'd fix this problem my own way. And that's where this whole story takes a turn. Because if Karen wanted to play games with my mailbox, I was going to give her one she'd never forget. At first, my plan was simple. Reinforce the mailbox. Steel post, concrete base. The kind of thing that doesn't budge even if you hit it with a baseball bat. But as I sat there thinking about it, sipping my coffee and watching Karen measure someone else's grass with an actual ruler, I realized something. This wasn't just about a mailbox anymore. This was about principle. About standing up to a bully. So I decided to go bigger, smarter. Now, before I tell you exactly what I built, let me take you through the weeks leading up to it. Because this wasn't a one-day project. Oh no. This was a masterpiece, months in the making. See, Karen wasn't just running over my mailbox. She was escalating. One day, I got a notice in my mailbox, a formal HOA violation. Mailbox not compliant with community aesthetic. You heard that right. She ran it over, then had the nerve to fine me for not having a mailbox that matched the others. Another week, she complained that my grass was half an inch too long. Half an inch, like she was measuring with NASA-grade equipment. And then, the cherry on top. She reported me for having my trash can visible from the street for a grand total of 10 minutes after the garbage truck left. 10 minutes. I swear she had binoculars trained on my driveway. By then, I was done playing nice, so I started researching. Heavy-duty mailbox posts. Reinforced steel designs, concrete anchors. Heck, I even stumbled across forums of other poor souls battling their own HOA tyrants, sharing tips like it was some underground resistance movement. And slowly, the plan came together. Step 1. Dig a deep, wide hole. Not your average mailbox post hole. I'm talking fortress-level foundation. Step 2. Fill it with concrete. And not just a little. I mean several bags worth. The kind of base you could build a skyscraper on. Step 3. Insert a steel post. Not wood, not aluminum solid, heavy steel. Painted black to look like any other mailbox post, but in reality, indestructible. And step 4. The piece to resistance, attach a custom-built mailbox that looked ordinary on the outside, but had a little surprise on the inside. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because while I was building, Karen was watching, and complaining, and escalating the day she came storming across my lawn, clipboard in hand, screaming about how my construction project was in violation of HOA policy. Yeah, that was the day I knew I had her right where I wanted her. I told her, real calm, don't worry, Karen. This mailbox is going to be fully compliant. You'll see. She squinted at me, probably trying to figure out what I meant. But the thing about bullies, they never see it coming when someone fights back smarter than they do. And oh, was she about to learn? Asterisk, asterisk, all right. Let's pick up where we left off by now. I had Karen watching me like a hawk. Every swing of my hammer, every shovel of dirt's I could practically feel her eyes burning into the back of my head. But the more she stared, the more I leaned into the role of innocent homeowner fixing his mailbox. Because if I was going to pull this off, I needed her to underestimate me. And trust me, Karen underestimated everyone, see? The thing about people like her is that they think they're the smartest person in the room. And while she was busy scribbling notes on her clipboard about my non-compliant mailbox, I was engineering something straight out of a doomsday prepper's playbook. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Wasn't I worried about breaking the law? And yeah, that thought crossed my mind. But here's the thing, my mailbox, perfectly legal. My post, set deep in concrete like any responsible homeowner would do. And as long as it was regulation height and looked decent, the HOA couldn't touch me. But beneath that innocent exterior, this was no ordinary mailbox. I remember the day I set the steel post into the ground. It was hot summer in full swingin'. I had sweat dripping down my face as I poured bag after bag of concrete. Every thud of the shovel felt like progress. Like I was literally laying the foundation of Karen's downfall. And right on cue, she waddled over. Sunglasses perched on her head, phone in one hand, clipboard in the other. "Excuse me," she said, like she was a mall cop catching a shoplifter. "Do you have approval for this?" I wiped my forehead, leaned on my shovel, and smiled. "Approval? For a mailbox?" "Yes," she snapped. "All exterior changes must be submitted to the HOA board." I wanted to laugh. "Karen, it's a mailbox. I'm just replacing the one that got smashed again." Her jaw tightened. "Well, it needs to match the others on this street. And I'll be filing a report if it doesn't." "File whatever you want," I told her, my smile never fading. "I promise it'll be fully compliant." And with that, she huffed, scribbled something on her clipboard, and stormed off like she'd just won the argument. But little did she know she'd already lost. Over the next few weeks, I played the long game by day. I worked like any other homeowner, measuring, cutting, painting. From the outside, it looked like I was just building a nice, sturdy mailbox. But inside? Oh, inside was where the magic happened. See, I had a buddy who worked in construction. And when I told him what Karen had been doing, he didn't just sympathize, he contributed. He hooked me up with scrap steel plates, heavy-duty bolts, and even some industrial-grade epoxy that could hold a car together. And we went to town first. We welded the steel box frame together. It looked like a regular mailbox on the outside, but inside it was reinforced like a bank vault. The walls were thick, the frame unyielding. Honestly, if someone tried to blow it up with fireworks, I'm not sure it would even dent then. We bolted it onto the steel post, sunk deep in that concrete base. The thing wasn't just solid, it was immovable. You could hit it with a sledgehammer, and the sledgehammer would lose. And for good measure, I gave it a nice, friendly paint job. Glossy black with a cute little red flag on the side. Exactly like every other mailbox on the street. HOA approved. On the surface, innocent, harmless. Invisible, but beneath that thin layer of paint, a trap was waiting now. Here's the fun part. When you're building something like this, you have to be patient. You can't just set it up and hope Karen hits it the next day. No, no, no. You have to wait. You have to bait the hook. And let me tell you, Karen was nothing if not predictable. Every morning, she'd back out of her driveway, yank the wheel hard to the right, and swing wide around the corner. And every morning, she'd get just a little too close to my yard. I'd seen the way her tires flirted with the curb, leaving little ruts in the grass. All I had to do was sit back and let nature and Karen's terrible driving take its course. But before that glorious day arrived, there was more drama. Because of course there was .c. Karen couldn't just leave me alone while I was building. She had to poke, had to prod, had to make sure I knew she was watching. Asterisk. One night, I caught her taking photos of my yard. Yeah, at 9 o'clock at night. She was out there with her phone, crouching down like some paparazzi wannabe, snapping pictures of my mailbox. I stood on the porch, arms crossed, and just watched her. Evening. Karen? I called out. She jumped, nearly dropping her phone. I'm just documenting known compliance. Of course you are, I said. Make sure you get my good side. The look on her face. Priceless. But the truth was, every photo she took just worked in my favor. Because my mailbox looked perfectly normal. By the book. HOA regulation through and through. She could send those pictures to the board, the city, the president, heck. Even the FBI, and no one would find a thing wrong. And that drove her crazy. Then came the day. It was a Wednesday morning. Bright, sunny, birds chirping. I was sipping coffee on my porch, pretending to read the paper, when I heard the familiar growl of Karen's SUV. Now, if you've ever had one of those moments where time slows down, you'll know exactly what I felt. She backed out, turned the wheel, accelerated, and in one smooth motion, that massive SUV swung wide straight toward my mailbox. Thunk. The sound echoed down the street. Not the dull crack of wood snapping, not the hollow rattle of a cheap tin box. No, this was the sound of metal meeting metal. The sound of an unstoppable force colliding with an immovable object, I swear. The whole SUV jolted like it had hit a brick wall. The front bumper crumpled. Plastic shards went flying. Karen's sunglasses flew off her head and landed on the dashboard, and me. I just sat there, sipping my coffee, trying my hardest not to laugh. She slammed on the brakes, threw the car in park, and jumped out, red-faced, eyes wide, screeching like a banshee. "What is this?" she screamed, pointing at the mailbox like it had personally insulted her. I set down my coffee, walked down the steps, and shrugged. "It's a mailbox, Karen, just like everyone else's." Her jaw dropped. She stomped over and actually tried to wiggle it. But of course, it didn't budge. That thing was anchored in more concrete than a city sidewalk. This is dangerous," she shrieked. "Dangerous?" I tilted my head. "Karen, you ran into my property. Maybe you should be more careful." Her face turned the color of a ripe tomato. "I'm reporting this to the HOA, to the city, to the police." "Go ahead," I said, pulling my phone out of my pocket. "Want me to send them the security footage too?" Because OEI had cameras. and they had caught every glorious second of her plowing into my mailbox like it was a demolition derby. Karen froze. For the first time since I'd moved into that neighborhood, she didn't have a comeback. She just sputtered, stomped her foot like a toddler, and stormed back to her SUV, half the bumper dragging on the ground. And me. I went back to my porch, finished my coffee, and enjoyed the sweet taste of victory, or so I thought, because if you think Karen was going to take that lying down, oh, you don't know Karen. And that's when this story stopped being about a mailbox and turned into an all-out neighborhood war. Asterisk. If you thought the story ended with Karen smashing her bumper on my reinforced mailbox and storming off, oh no, this was just the opening act. Because if there's one thing I've learned about people like her, it's that humiliation doesn't make them quit. It makes them dangerous. The very next day, I woke up to find a letter stuffed in my mailbox. Not gently placed, not slid in by the mailman stuffed. The envelope was crumpled, the handwriting furious. It wasn't even official HOA stationery. It was just a handwritten note that read, "Remove your hazardous mailbox immediately, or face consequences." Consequences, I remember sitting at my kitchen table, sipping my morning coffee, holding that letter like it was some kind of ransom note. And the more I stared at it, the more I realized Karen wasn't just mad. She was unhinged. But here's the thing. She underestimated me again. She thought fear would make me back down. She thought I'd yank that mailbox out of the ground just to avoid her wrath. Instead, I smiled. Because now it wasn't just about a mailbox. It was about seeing how far Karen was willing to go, and how far I was willing to push back. That week, the HOA board randomly decided to schedule an inspection of my property. Gee, I wonder who might have suggested that. 3 board members showed up, clipboards in hand, walking slowly around my yard like they were evaluating a crime scene. I leaned against my porch rail, arms crossed, watching the show. One of them, a man named Doug, cleared his throat. Sir, we've received a complaint about your mailbox." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? And what seems to be the problem?" Doug looked uncomfortable. It's very sturdy." I almost laughed. Sturdy. Is that against the rules now? Should I have built it out of cardboard instead? Another board member, a woman named Linda, jumped in. No. It's just unusual." I motioned toward the street. "Does it look any different than anyone else's?" They all looked. Glossy black paint, standard size, regulation height, red flag on the side. Completely normal. "No," Linda admitted. "Then I don't see the problem," I said. They scribbled some notes, exchanged a few glances. And finally Doug said, "Well, technically, it is compliant." Karen, who had been lurking across the street with her arms folded, nearly exploded. She started yelling before they even walked away. "This is a disgrace. It's a weapon, not a mailbox." Doug tried to calm her down, but she wasn't having it. "You're all useless. If you won't do anything, I'll handle it myself." And that right there. That was the moment I knew the game had escalated. For the next few weeks, things got strange. Little things started happening around my property. One morning, my trash can was tipped over garbage strewn across the driveway. Another day, I found eggs splattered on my front window. And once, I came out to see a fresh scratch down the side of my car, as if someone had run a key along it. Now, I didn't have proof it was Karen. But come on, who else would it be? Random vandals don't also happen to file daily complaints with the HOA, so I did what any rational person would do. I upgraded my security. I installed motion-activated cameras, floodlights, and even one of those doorbell cams that sends alerts straight to your phone. If Karen so much as sneezed in my direction, I'd know about it. And sure enough, it didn't take long. One night, just past midnight, my phone buzzed. Motion detected. I pulled up the feed, And there she was, Karen, in her pajamas, no less, creeping across my lawn with a can of spray paint in her hand. I couldn't believe it. She was about to vandalize my brand new reinforced mailbox. I almost let her. I almost sat back with popcorn to watch. But then I realized Di had a golden opportunity. So I stepped out onto the porch, nice and quiet, and cleared my throat. Evening. Karen, she froze, spray can halfway to the mailbox. Beautiful night for it. What exactly? I asked, tilting my head. Her face turned ghost white. I was just making sure everything was secure. I held up my phone, showing her the live feed. Funny, because my camera says you were about to give my mailbox a new paint job. She stammered, backed away, and then did what Karens do best. She tried to flip it on me. You can't film me. That's illegal. I laughed. On my property? Karen, you're lucky I'm not calling the cops right now, she sputtered, dropped the spray can, and scurried back across the street like a raccoon caught in a spotlight. And me. I just picked up the can, set it on my porch, and added the footage to my Karen collection at this point. I had enough evidence to make a highlight reel. But here's the thing about winning. Battles you start to wonder when the war is coming. And, oh, it came. The next HOA meeting was nothing short of a circus. Karen marched in like a general going to war. She slapped down printed photos of my mailbox, of my yard, of me, and demanded immediate action. This man is a menace to the community, she screamed. His mailbox destroyed my vehicle. He's harassing me with cameras, and he's a danger to everyone here. I stood up slowly, calm as could be, and laid out my evidence. The security footage of her running into my mailbox. The video of her creeping across my lawn with spray paint. The egging. The note, one by one. I put the pieces on the table. The room went silent. Doug cleared his throat. Karen, is this true? Her face twisted. He's lying. He doctored those videos. He's framing me. But no one believed her anymore. The evidence was too clear. People were shaking their heads, whispering. For the first time, Karen didn't look like the queen of the HOA. She looked like a fool, and me. I just smiled, because in that moment, I realized DE wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was showing the whole neighborhood what happens when you stand up to a bully. But the thing about Karen, she doesn't go down easy. And while she was losing ground with the HOA, I knew she was plotting her next move. And trust me, it was going to be big. Asterisk. You'd think, after getting humiliated at the HOA meeting, Karen would finally back off. I mean, most people would. Most people would take the L, slink back into their home, and maybe, just maybe, reflect on their behavior. But Karen? Oh no, Karen wasn't most people. If anything, the HOA meeting just lit a fire under her. Because when a control freak loses control, they don't quit. They double down, and sure enough, it wasn't long before her retaliation started. It began with gossip, suddenly. I was the troublemaker of the neighborhood. People I used to wave to while mowing my lawns started looking at me differently. Whispers followed me when I walked my dog. I even overheard one woman telling another that I was dangerous. Where was this coming from? You guessed it, Karen. She spun the story in her favor. According to her, I had set up some kind of booby-trapped mailbox with the sole purpose of wrecking her SUV. I was apparently unstable, vindictive, and a threat to everyone's safety. And the worst part, some people believed her. That's the thing about lies. Tell them enough times and they start to sound like truth. But me? I didn't flinch. I knew I had the receipts, literal video evidence of everything. And besides, I wasn't done with her yet. Then came phase 2 of Karen's retaliation. Paperwork, suddenly. I was drowning in HOA violation notices. Trash can visible from the Street grass length exceeds community. Standard, improperly placed garden ornament. Mailbox. Color slightly different shade than regulation black. Yes, you heard that right. She actually tried to claim my mailbox was the wrong shade of black dot. It was ridiculous, petty, exhausting, but also kind of hilarious. Because here's the thing, every notice she filed, I fought back. I took photos, gathered evidence, submitted appeals. And every single time, the board ruled in my favor. One by one, her little darts bounced off. And every loss just made her angrier. I could practically see the steam rising from her ears whenever I won. She'd stand at the end of her driveway, arms crossed, glaring at me like she was trying to melt me with her eyes. Honestly, it was almost entertaining. But then, things took a darker turn. One evening, I came home from work to find my front yard toilet papered. Not just a couple rolls. Either the whole place looked like a winter wonderland of Charmin. Trees, bushes, mailbox, everything covered. At first, I laughed. I mean, who even does that anymore? High school kids. But then I noticed something taped to my front door. It was another note. Same angry handwriting as before. You haven't won, you never will. That's when I knew Karen was behind it, and suddenly, it wasn't funny anymore. Because this wasn't just HOA nonsense now. This was harassment. So I did what I do best. I planned. See, Karen wanted a war. Fine, but I wasn't going to fight it with yelling or vandalism. I was going to fight it with strategy. I started documenting everything. Every glare, every note, every bogus violation. I kept a binder, an actual binder full of evidence. Photos, videos, timestamps, witness statements. The whole 9 yards. Because I knew something she didn't. Eventually, her obsession was going to cross a line. And when it did, I'd be ready. But while I was preparing for the long game, I wasn't about to sit quietly in the short term. No, I wanted Karen to feel that she couldn't push me around. So I decided to have a little fun now. Let me set the scene. It was a sunny Saturday morning, the perfect kind of day for yard work. Karen was outside too. Course, because heaven forbid anyone in the neighborhood do something without her supervision. I dragged out my mower, waved to her cheerfully, and got to work. But instead of just mowing like normal, I improvised. Karen's big thing was property lines. She loved to complain if someone's lawn care overlapped into her sacred territory by even an inch. So I made a point to mow right up to the line. Perfectly straight, perfectly even, like I was drawing a boundary in neon lights. Then I pulled out my trimmer and edged the grass so sharply it looked like a laser had cut it. It drove her insane. I could see her pacing, arms flailing, muttering to herself. She wanted so badly to say something, but technically, wasn't doing anything wrong. That's when I gave her a little wave and shouted, "Beautiful day, isn't it, Karen?" She nearly exploded. Later that week, I took things a step further. Karen loved to patrol the neighborhood with her clipboard. So I decided to join her. One evening, I walked behind her at a casual distance, holding my own clipboard. Every time she stopped to scribble a note about someone's lawn or fence, I stopped too. Pretended to write something down. She finally spun around. "What are you doing?" I smiled. "Just documenting non-compliance. You know, community spirit and all." Her face turned crimson. "You can't do that." "Why not?" "You do it all the time." She sputtered, stomped her foot, and stormed off. And me? I kept walking, clipboard in hand, making sure the whole neighborhood saw. Because if she wanted to make me the villain, fine. I'd play the role, but in a way that made her look ridiculous. But while I was having my fun, Karen was plotting something much bigger, and I didn't realize how far she was willing to go. Until the night of the mystery meeting. See, one of my neighbors, sweet old Mrs. Henderson, gave me a heads up. She said Karen had called an emergency HOA session at her house. Only certain people were invited. According to Mrs. Henderson, the whole agenda was one thing: getting rid of me. Karen was trying to rally the board, twist the bylaws, and force me out of the neighborhood altogether. That's when I knew this wasn't just petty anymore. This was an eviction attempt. A coup. And if she wanted a war that big, well, she was about to learn I had more weapons than just a reinforced mailbox. Because when it comes to Karen versus me, I don't lose. Asterisk. You ever notice how when someone loses power, they'll do anything to get it back? That was Karen. After the HOA meeting where she got exposed, she didn't just retreat. No, she regrouped. She schemed. And her new mission was simple: get rid of me. And that's how the whole emergency meeting plot was born. Now, I wasn't technically invited, of course. This was Karen's hand-picked circle of loyalist people, too scared of her wrath to say no. Or people who genuinely believed her lies. But in a neighborhood like ours, secrets don't stay hidden long. Mrs. Henderson, the sweetest old lady you'll ever meet. The kind of neighbor who bakes cookies for everyone, gave me the inside scoop. She whispered, "She's trying to have you kicked out, dear. Says you're a danger to the community." Danger? Me? The guy who mowed his lawn in straight lines and waved to the mailman. Meanwhile, the woman vandalizing property at midnight with spray paint was apparently the hero. Unbelievable. But instead of panicking, I smiled. Because if Karen wanted to play politics, well, I had a few moves of my own. The next official HOA meeting was only a week away. That gave me time, so I started knocking on doors. Not in a pushy way, not in a campaign-y way, just neighborly. I introduced myself to the people I hadn't met yet, chatted about their dogs, their kids, their gardens, and casually, just casually, I'd mention the ongoing mailbox situation. Oh yeah, you've probably heard about Karen's SUV, right? The mailbox she ran into. Funny thing is, I've got security footage if you want to see it. Some people laughed. Some rolled their eyes like they'd been waiting years for someone to stand up to her. A few even offered their own horror stories, how she'd harassed them about Christmas decorations, fined them for leaving a kid's bike in the driveway, or threatened to call animal control over a barking dog by the end of that week. I wasn't just the guy with the mailbox anymore. I was the guy standing up to Karen. And you know what? People were hungry for that. The HOA meeting rolled around. And I'll never forget the scene. Karen strutted in like she owned the place, a stack of papers under her arm. She sat at the head of the table, even though she wasn't technically present in classic Karen move. Her loyalists clustered around her, glaring at me like I'd committed treason. The rest of the room? Packed. More people than I'd ever seen at a meeting. And I knew why they wanted to see the showdown. Karen cleared her throat dramatically. "I'd like to address the matter of our problematic neighbor." She gestured at me like she was unveiling a villain in a courtroom drama. "He has created a hazard, antagonized residents, and disrupted the harmony of our community. One proposed we enact Article 14, Section C of the bylaws, and force his removal from the association." Gasps echoed around the room. Even I had to admit that was bold. She was literally trying to evict me. I leaned back in my chair, calm as could be, and waited. Because I knew what was coming next. Doug, one of the board members, looked uneasy. "Ah, Karen, Article 14, Section C. That's for severe violations, like criminal activity." "Exactly," she snapped. "He's a menace." That's when I stood up, slowly, deliberately. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began. "If I may present a little evidence," I set my laptop on the table and pulled up the footage. The room went silent as the projector screen lit up. First clip. Karen's SUV plowing into my mailbox. The crunch, the jolt, the bumper falling off. Clear as day. Second clip. Karen creeping across my lawn at midnight with spray paint in her hand. Deer in third lights when I caught her. Third clip, her storming onto my property. Screaming about compliance, clipboard waving like a sword. Asterisk. By the time the third clip ended, you could hear a pin drop. I folded my arms. Now, I ask you who's really the menace here. Asterisk, asterisk, the room erupted. People whispered, laughed, even clapped. Mrs. Henderson actually said, "Good for you, dear," loud enough for everyone to hear. And Karen. She lost it. This is harassment. He's twisting everything. He doctored those videos. But no one believed her anymore. Not after seeing her in action with their own eyes. Doug cleared his throat again. Motion 2. Dismiss Karen's complaint. Seconded. Someone shouted from the back. Hands went up. Nearly unanimous. And just like that, Karen's grand plan crumbled. But here's where things got interesting. See, I could have left it at that. I'd won. She'd lost. End of story, right? Wrong, because the board, tired of Karen's antics, decided to turn the tables. Doug leaned forward. Actually, while we're on the subject, Karen, we've had multiple complaints about your behavior. Harassment, trespassing, vandalism. Karen's eyes bulged. What? Linda, another board member, nodded. Yes, and with this evidence presented tonight, we're considering disciplinary action. Karen sputtered, waving her arms. This is outrageous. I am the HOA. But the truth was finally catching up with her. The very rules she weaponized against everyone else were now being turned back on her. And I can't lie, watching her realize she wasn't untouchable. That was almost better than the mailbox revenge. Almost, of course. Karen didn't give up that easily. Over the next few days, she went into full meltdown mode. She stormed around the neighborhood, ranting about conspiracies. She accused me of hacking her car, of stalking her with cameras, even of bribing the HOA board. It was wild. People started avoiding her altogether. But me? I kept my cool, smiled, waved, acted like I didn't have a care in the world, because here's the thing. Once a bully loses credibility, they're done. They can scream, they can stomp, but no one takes them seriously anymore. And Karen, she was unraveling. But Tandu knew there was a but. She wasn't finished yet. Because, just when I thought the storm was passing, she pulled a stunt so outrageous, so Karen, that it made the mailbox incident look tame. And it all started with a knock on my door late one night. Asterisk, asterisk. So there I was. Quiet evening, cup of tea in hand, watching some late-night reruns. I'd just started to think, maybe, just maybe, Karen was finally running out of steam. And then knock, knock, knock. Not the polite kind of knock either. No, this was aggressive. The kind of knock that says, "Open this door right now, or else." I set down my mug, sighed, and opened the door. And there she was. Karen, but this time, she wasn't holding a clipboard. She wasn't even trying to look official. Nope. She was clutching a manila folder and had a wild look in her eyes. You think you've won, don't you? She hissed. I leaned on the doorframe, calm as ever. Karen, it's 10 at night. What are you doing on my porch? She shoved the folder at me. This is a petition. I've got signatures. People want you gone. I glanced at the papers. A few signatures, sure, but not nearly enough to make it official. In fact, half the names were the same few people who always followed her around like ducklings. I raised an eyebrow. That's cute. You had people sign your anti-me fan club sheet? Congratulations. Her face turned red. Don't mock me. You don't belong here. You don't fit this community. I tilted my head. You mean I don't bend the knee to you? She sputtered, pointed a finger at me, and shouted, "You'll regret this. You'll regret everything." Then she stomped off into the night, leaving the folder flapping in the wind on my porch. I closed the door, shaking my head. I thought that was the end of it. Just another tantrum. But oh, I underestimated how far Karen was willing to go. The very next morning, I woke up to find a police car parked outside my house. Now, I'll be honest, I panicked for a second. My brain went a mile a minute. Did Karen actually? Yep, she did. The officer knocked politely, and I opened the door. "Morning, sir. We've had a report filed against you." My stomach sank. Report? For what? He glanced at his notepad. Harassment, destruction of property, and threatening behavior. I almost laughed out loud. "Let me guess, Karen." The officer's lips twitched, like he was trying not to smile. "Ma'am, across the street. Yes, of course." I invited him in, pulled up my laptop, and showed him everything. The mailbox footage. The spray paint attempt. The midnight notes. The HOA meeting recordings. By the end, the officer was shaking his head. "Sir, from where I'm standing, it looks like you're the one being harassed." I nodded. "Exactly." He closed his notepad. "We'll make a record of this. If she tries anything else, call us right away. And keep that footage backed up." As he left, I caught Karen watching from her window, her blinds twitching. And for the first time, I saw something on her face that wasn't anger. It was panic, but if you think that was enough to stop her... Oh no, Karen had officially gone from annoying HOA busybody to full-blown neighborhood villain. And villains don't give up. They escalate. A few days later, I woke up to find something unbelievable. My mailbox, my glorious, reinforced, unbreakable mailbox, was gone. Not smashed. Not dented. Gone. Post ripped out of the concrete, bolts cut. The entire thing missing. I stood there in my slippers, mouth open, staring at the empty patch of dirt Karen had stolen. My mailbox. It was so outrageous. So cartoonishly insane that I actually started laughing. Like, who does that? Who sneaks out in the middle of the night with bolt cutters and steals a mailbox the size of a small safe? But the laughter faded fast because I realized this was serious. Mailboxes are federal property. Messing with one. That's not just an HOA violation. That's a federal crime. And Karen had just crossed a line into territory she couldn't wriggle out of. I called the police immediately. The same officer came back, and when he saw the empty spot, he let out a low whistle. "Sir, this isn't vandalism anymore. This is theft. And considering it's a mailbox, we're talking federal offense." I nodded. "And I think I know exactly who did it." He smirked. "Yeah. I have a guess too." We filed the report, and I handed over the camera footage. And oh, it was glorious. Clear as day. There was Karen at 2:37 a.m., lugging bolt cutters, sweating, struggling like crazy to wrench the post out of the ground. She even tripped and fell flat on her face at one point. I must have watched that clip 20 times later, just for fun. The officer shook his head. "I don't know what her problem is with you, but she's in serious trouble." And just like that, the game had changed again. Because now Karen wasn't just fighting me. She was fighting the law. But if there's one thing you should know about Karen by now, it's this. She never admits defeat, even after the cops paid her a visit, even after she nearly fainted on her porch. When they mentioned federal crime, she still tried to twist the narrative. She started knocking on doors, ranting about how I had framed her, how I'd edited the footage, how I was secretly some kind of criminal mastermind with a vendetta against her. It was pathetic. People were done with her. I saw neighbors shaking their heads when she walked by. I overheard someone mutter, "She's lost it. Her little army of loyalists. Gone. Even they couldn't defend mailbox theft. And me. I didn't have to lift a finger. For the first time since moving into that neighborhood, I felt peace. Real, genuine peace. But here's the funny thing about peace. It doesn't last, because just when you think the storm is over, you hear thunder in the distance. And in this case, the thunder came in the form of a lawsuit. Asterisk, asterisk, you ever notice how some people, when they're cornered, don't back down? They double down. That was Karen. Mailbox theft. Police warnings. HOA humiliation. Any sane person would have cut their losses, apologized, and moved on. But Karen, no. Karen decided the real solution was to take me to court. It started with a thick envelope in my mailbox, or at least the temporary one the Postal Service had set up after she stole mine. I tore it open and nearly spit out my coffee. Inside was a lawsuit, filed by Karen. The claims. Oh, they were rich. According to her, I had defamed her character by doctoring videos, harassed her with malicious intent, and get this, intentionally installed a mailbox designed to entrap her. Vehicle? I kid you not. She accused me of setting a trap like some kind of suburban Bond villain. I laughed so hard I nearly fell out of my chair. But once the laughter faded, reality hit. This wasn't just neighborhood drama anymore. This was legal. And if I didn't take it seriously, Karen could actually cause me real problems. So, I lawyered up. Enter Mr. Peterson. He was calm, collected. The kind of guy who looked like he'd eaten Karens for breakfast his entire career. He flipped through the papers, chuckled, and said, "Oh, this is going to be fun." That's when I knew I was in good hands. The day of the first hearing arrived. And let me tell you, it was an experience. Karen strutted into the courthouse wearing what I can only describe as her power outfit. Bright red blazer, oversized sunglasses, a stack of papers clutched dramatically to her chest. She looked like she was auditioning for a courtroom TV show. I sat quietly with Mr. Peterson, trying not to grin. When the judge entered, Karen immediately launched into a performance worthy of an Oscar. "Your Honor, this man has tormented me. He has slandered me, stalked me, and deliberately endangered me with his mailbox of mass destruction." The courtroom snickered. Even the bailiff covered his mouth to hide a smile. Asterisk. The judge raised an eyebrow. Mailbox of mass destruction. Asterisk, asterisk. Karen nodded furiously. Yes. It was reinforced, designed to cause maximum damage. My vehicle was practically destroyed. Mr. Peterson stood, calm as ever. "Your Honor, if I may present Exhibit A." He wheeled out a flat-screen monitor. Hit play, and there it was again. The footage. Karen, SUV, crash, crunch. The judge leaned forward, studying the video. "Ma'am, it appears you drove directly into the mailbox." Karen threw up her hands. It was dark. He knew I wouldn't see it. Peterson smirked. "And Exhibit B, Your Honor, footage of the defendant on the homeowner's property at 2:37 a.m. stealing said mailbox with bolt cutters." The room gasped. The judge turned to Karen, stone-faced. "Is this you in the video?" Karen squirmed. That could be anyone. Peterson zoomed in. Clear as day, her face, her license plate, even her monogrammed sweatshirt. The judge sighed. "Ma'am, this is not only frivolous litigation. This is very close to self-incrimination." I almost felt bad for her. Almost. The case was dismissed faster than you can say. HOA Karen. But here's the kicker. The judge wasn't done. He looked at Peterson and me. "Gentlemen, you may want to consider filing a countersuit for harassment and damages. This woman is abusing the legal system." Karen's jaw dropped. "This is a conspiracy. They're all against me." The bailiff had to escort her out as she shouted about corruption and injustice. And just like that, the tables had turned again. Now, you might think that was the end of it. That Karen, after being humiliated in front of a judge, would finally retreat. But no, if anything. The courtroom loss made her more dangerous, because when people like Karen run out of rules to twist, they turn to chaos. And chaos was exactly what was waiting for me when I got home that evening. I pulled into my driveway, still buzzing from the courtroom victory. But the second I stepped out of my car, I froze my yard. It was trashed, someone-G. I wonder who had dumped garbage bags all over my lawn. Eggs smeared across my porch. Toilet paper hanging from the trees like some twisted Halloween prank. And right in the middle of it all, spray painted across my garage door in giant red letters. Get out. I stood there in stunned silence. This wasn't just harassment anymore. This was war. And if Karen wanted war, I was ready, because she'd underestimated me one last time, and the revenge I had planned next. Let's just say, she definitely didn't see it coming. Asterisk, asterisk. You know that moment when you've just had enough. That's where I was. After the lawsuit stunt, after the vandalism on my garage, after the garbage bags, the eggs, the spray paint, I was done playing defense. Karen wanted war. Fine, but I wasn't just going to fight back. I was going to end this. Step 1 was simple. Document everything. By now, I had hours of footage. Karen trespassing. Karen vandalizing. Karen screaming in my driveway. My garage door graffiti. Photographed. Garbage bags. Cataloged. Every egg yolk stain. Recorded. I even called the police again. Not to complain, but to build a record. When the officer showed up, I handed him a USB stick full of evidence like it was a Netflix series waiting to be binged. He shook his head. Sir, this is enough to file multiple charges. Harassment, vandalism, trespassing, maybe even stalking. Perfect, I said, because this time I wasn't just defending myself. I was going on the offensive. Step 2. The neighborhood. Remember all those neighbors Karen had tormented over the years? The Christmas decoration fines, the barking dog threats, the petty citations. Yeah, they remembered too. So I started making calls, knocking on doors, sharing my footage, and what I found was pure gold. One neighbor showed me a letter Karen had written about their improperly painted fence. Another had photos of her sneaking onto their lawn to measure the height of their grass. Someone else even had audio recordings of her ranting about unapproved bird feeders. Piece by piece, we were building a mountain of evidence that made her look less like an HOA leader and more like a neighborhood tyrant. And people were fired up. It wasn't just my fight anymore. It was our fight. Step 3. The masterstroke now. I could have gone the boring route, press charges, let the law deal with her. But where's the satisfaction in that? No, I wanted something poetic, something Karen would never forget. So I hatched a plan. See, the HOA was holding their annual community barbecue. Big event. Everyone comes out. Karen usually ran the show, barking orders about where to put the folding tables and what brands of soda were allowed. But this year, I volunteered to help with setup, and oh boy, did I have a setup planned. The day of the barbecue, I arrived early with my laptop and a projector. Nobody questioned me by now. Half the neighborhood was on my side. When Karen showed up, she was in rare form. Clipboard in hand, barking orders like a general at war. No, no, no. The chips go on this table. Who brought unsanctioned napkins? These aren't regulation. Classic Karen, but when the sun went down, and it was time for the community slideshow, usually some boring photos of landscaping and park improvements, I stepped up to the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, this year, we thought we'd do something a little different. A highlight reel of our neighborhood. In action, I hit play. and the screen lit up clip after clip of Karen's greatest hits. Her SUV smashing into my mailbox. Her sneaking with spray paint at midnight. Her screaming on my lawn, veins popping out of her forehead. Her bolt cutting the mailbox post, tripping over it. And face planting in the grass. The crowd erupted in laughter, gasps, whispers. Someone yelled, "Oh my God, I knew it was her." Karen's face turned crimson. She jumped up, shouting, "Turn that off. This is slander. This is illegal." But the clips kept rolling. Her ranting about conspiracies. Her spray-painted "Get Out" message across my garage. By the time it ended, people were booing her. Not me, her. And then, the final blow. I pulled out a folder. For anyone interested, here's a petition to formally remove Karen from the HOA board for misconduct, harassment, and abuse of power. Signatures will be collected at the back. It was like dropping a match in a field of dry grass. People swarmed to sign. Even her old loyalists were done with her. Karen stormed off, screaming about lawyers' corruption. Betrayal. But it didn't matter, because by the end of the night, the petition had more than enough signatures to oust her. The next week, it became official. Karen was stripped of her HOA power. Gone, done, removed when the news spread. Neighbors literally cheered. Mrs. Henderson baked me a cake shaped like a mailbox. Doug cracked open champagne. Kids ran through the sprinklers chanting, "No more Karen." And me. I finally felt peace. For the first time since moving in, my house wasn't a battleground. It was a home now. You'd think that's the end. Curtain closed. Happy ending, but with Karen. Oh no. Because just when you think she's finished, she always finds a way to slither back. And let's just say, the next time I saw her, she wasn't holding a clipboard. She was holding something a lot more dangerous. Asterisk, asterisk. Peace. That's what I finally had, with Karen stripped of her HOA power. The neighborhood was like a different world. People smiled more. Kids rode their bikes without fear of fines. The air felt lighter, like a storm had finally passed. But with Karen, the storm never really passes. It just waits. It started small. I'd see her car driving slowly past my house late at night. Headlights dimmed. Or I'd catch a glimpse of her standing at the edge of her yard. Arms crossed, just staring. At first, I brushed it off. She was bitter, embarrassed. Of course, she'd sulk. But then, things escalated. One morning, I found nails scattered across my driveway. Not just a few dozens. Shiny, sharp, deliberate. A week later, someone poured sugar into my gas tank. Thankfully, I caught it before starting the engine. And then came the worst. I woke up at 3 a.m. to the smell of smoke. Rushed outside, and there it was, my trash bin, set on fire. Flames licking the side of my garage. If I hadn't woken up when I did, my house could have gone up in flames. That's when I knew. This wasn't HOA drama anymore. This wasn't about mailboxes or bylaws, or board meetings. This was dangerous. Karen had gone full unhinged. I called the cops again, of course. They took the fire seriously. Arson is no joke. The officer assured me they'd step up patrols, but I could tell by his tone, without hard evidence. Their hands were tied. And that's when I made a decision. If the system couldn't stop Karen, I would asterisk now. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't about to do anything reckless. But Karen had one weakness. She couldn't resist being Karen. She always had to confront, to escalate, to insert herself. So I set a trap. I installed extra cameras, hidden ones this time. Not just on my house, but on trees, fences, even a fake birdhouse with a lens tucked inside. I kept my yard spotless, like bait. Mailbox shining. Garage freshly painted. Grass trimmed. And then, I waited. It didn't take long. 3 nights later, at 2:14 a.m., she struck. The footage showed her creeping up my driveway, a hammer in hand, eyes wild. She looked around, muttering to herself, then raised the hammer like she was about to smash my windows. That's when my floodlights blasted on, brighter than a football stadium. She froze, and my voice rang out from the speaker system. I'd installed. Smile for the cameras. Karen. She dropped the hammer and bolted, but it was too late. Every angle, every frame captured in high definition. I called the cops, emailed them the footage before they even arrived, and this time, they didn't just take notes. They put her in cuffs. Asterisk, asterisk. The neighborhood woke up to the sight of Karen being led away in handcuffs, screaming about conspiracies, corruption, how we'd all regret betraying her. But the truth was clear. She wasn't the queen of the HOA anymore. She wasn't the neighborhood tyrant. She was just criminal now. You'd think that would be the end. And in some ways, it was. Karen faced charges: arson, attempted vandalism, harassment. The HOA banned her permanently. Neighbors celebrated like it was the 4th of July. But here's the thing about battles like this. Even when you win, you're changed. I'd moved into that neighborhood looking for peace and quiet. Instead, I got the fight of my life against the ultimate HOA Karen. And though I came out on top, I'll never forget the lesson she taught me. Sometimes the biggest battles aren't fought in courtrooms or meetings. They're fought in driveways, front lawns, and yes, even at mailboxes. But here's the kicker. Weeks later, after the dust had settled, I checked my mail one evening. And inside, tucked between a utility bill and a coupon flyer, was a note written in shaky handwriting. No return address, it said. This isn't over. Asterisk, asterisk, that note. Those 3 little words, this isn't over, were all it took to remind me. With Karen, peace was always temporary. I stared at the paper, wondering if it was some kind of bluff. Maybe it was written before she got arrested, and it just got delayed in the mail. But deep down, I knew better. Karen wasn't done. Not yet. Weeks went by. The neighborhood returned to normal, or at least as normal as it could after the circus she'd created. People planted flowers, kids sold lemonade, dogs barked without fear of citation slips taped to their doors. But me, I stayed alert. Cameras running, lights on timers, backups stored in the cloud, because I knew she'd be back. And sure enough, one quiet Saturday evening, it happened. I was grilling in the backyard, enjoying the kind of peace I'd dreamed about when I bought this house. When I heard a sound clang from the front yard, I set down my spatula and crept around the side of the house, and there she was, Karen, disheveled. Hair wild, clothes wrinkled like she hadn't slept in days. She was standing in front of my mailbox, the mailbox a symbol of everything she hated, and in her hands, a crowbar. She raised it high, ready to swing when I finally stepped out. Karen, she froze, slowly turned, eyes wide like a raccoon caught in a spotlight. You can't keep doing this, I said. Calm, steady, her voice cracked. You ruined me. You took everything. This is your fault. I shook my head. No, Karen, you did this to yourself. For a moment, the crowbar trembled in her grip. Her breathing was ragged, desperate, and then she swung. But not at the mailbox, at me. I ducked just in time, the crowbar whooshing past my ear. Adrenaline surged through me. I stumbled back, shouting, enough. And before she could swing again, the sound of sirens cut through the night. 2 police cruisers screeched to a halt in front of my house. Lights flashing, doors slamming. Turns out, one of my neighbors, bless Mrs. Henderson, had seen Karen lurking earlier and called it in. The officers rushed forward. tackling Karen before she could get another swing. The crowbar clattered to the ground, and just like that, it was over. For real. This time, they cuffed her, read her rights, and loaded her into the cruiser. She screamed, kicked, ranted about conspiracies and revenge, but it didn't matter. The evidence was undeniable. Attempted assault, violation of restraining orders, destruction of property. She wasn't coming back from this one. The next morning, the neighborhood gathered. People hugged. Kids rode their bikes past my driveway, pointing at the still-standing mailbox like it was some kind of monument. Doug from the HOA clapped me on the back. "You did it, man." She's gone for good, and Mrs. Henderson, sweet as ever, handed me another cake, this time shaped like a gavel. "For justice," she said with a wink. Standing there, watching everyone smile, I realized something. This whole saga, every sleepless night, every ridiculous stunt, every battle over that mailbox, it had forged something stronger than steel or concrete. It had built a community. Karen thought she could control us with fear. But in the end, all she did was bring us together. And as for my mailbox, still standing, still unbroken, a little dented, sure, a little weathered, but tougher than ever. Kind of like me, now whenever I check my mail. I can't help but smile, because that box isn't just holding bills and flyers. It's holding the memory of the time I stood up to the ultimate HOA Karen and won, and the next time someone asks me about it, I'll lean back, grin, and say, "Want to hear a story about a mailbox Karen definitely didn't see coming?" Asterisk, asterisk, and that's a wrap. A huge thank you to everyone for watching. This channel is nothing without this amazing community. If you have ideas for future videos, drop them down in the comments below. As always, subscribe if you're new here. Until next time, take care.